Hello, team. Welcome to the Impact Ready podcast. I am so excited that you are here today. In this episode, we are going to talk about the feeling of being stuck in your life. And this is such a huge topic for people. And in fact, it's so big that I'm going to be doing a live workshop on this very subject next Wednesday, August 26th, how to find what's actually keeping you stuck in your life. We're going to address the experience of what it feels like to be stuck, the common mistakes that people make when they're in this place, and then a few very powerful perspective shifts to help you get out of your own way when you're feeling that stuckness. Now, this is going to be a live workshop. So if you've been wanting to get in community with some other people, be a part of something that's exciting and centered around your growth, this hour and a half together is going to be so powerful. And to get updates on the workshop, go to my website, sign up for the newsletter, or go to join.stephsaffer.com. That's also going to be in the show notes for you. And you will get updates about this coming workshop and then all future opportunities for workshops. So I'm really excited about this, just to go a little bit deeper on a topic that is so challenging for people and really just gets into your identity if you're in the experience too long. I think if we were to look back on our lives, being stuck is one of those experiences almost everyone encounters, yet very few people know how to describe. It might be a little bit different for everyone, but what we can understand is that it's not about laziness. Feeling stuck is not about being a lazy person. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's not even a lack of motivation at the root of it. In fact, some of the most capable, successful people are the ones who feel the most stuck. I've worked with presidents of companies who felt stuck, founders, COOs, senior vice presidents, directors, managers, all of these people who are high impact, high pressure, high visibility, high performers, and they also have experiences of feeling stuck in their life. So just to clarify, this is not a you thing. This is just a human thing. And it's funny too, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that somebody was feeling this way just from looking at them. From the outside, life might look perfectly fine, and that person might be productive or responsible or successful by most standards. But internally, it feels like they've stopped moving. They know they're capable of more, yet they can't seem to bridge this gap between where they are and where they want to be. And this is a very common sensation of stuckness, is that feeling of not moving, of stagnation. And humans despise stagnation because it feels like death to the spirit and the soul, this stagnation. But I want to just push you and challenge you a little bit to think not of it as a bad thing, not of it as an inherent problem, but a signal. And we'll get more into that. Some people describe this feeling of stuckness like being in a fog or being confused, being unmotivated, not being able to make a decision, not being able to see the path ahead. There's so many ways that people describe this sensation. But the way that I think about it is the experience of being stuck can feel like driving with a parking brake on. You're still moving through life, but everything requires more effort than it should. Like the decisions feel a little harder, or they feel heavier or more high risk, high stakes. The progress feels slower. It doesn't seem like things are really flowing or working out for you. You wake up with a sense that you're behind even before the day's even started. You have ideas that you have and then you lose them or you never pursue them. You have goals that you just keep pushing down the road. It's like you're kicking the can down the road. And you had the same types of conversations with yourself over and over again. Conversations that might have been going on for months or even like a year. People can be in the stuckness for quite a long time. Eventually, a person can be in it so long that they stop believing that they're simply experiencing a feeling, that feeling of stuckness in a situation, and they begin believing that they are a person who is stuck. And that seems like a very slight distinction, but it can be incredibly damaging because it transforms this temporary experience into a permanent identity. And what's interesting is that people rarely describe themselves as feeling stuck. They instead talk about symptoms. They say they're overwhelmed, They're burned out, they're exhausted, they're unmotivated, they're constantly procrastinating. They say they've lost confidence, or they don't know what they want anymore, or they can't seem to make a decision. They feel like they're overthinking everything and they can't enjoy their life. They say to things like, I can't enjoy the success that I've had. I'm not actually feeling much joy in my life at all. And on the surface, these all appear to be different problems, like they're separate issues, but underneath, they often point to the same underlying experience, which is a feeling of being able to move forward. That's really the root of the issue. One of the biggest misconceptions about being stuck is that it's simply an action problem. You're not taking the right action or enough action. We assume that if we are more disciplined or more motivated or more productive, we'll finally make progress. But being stuck is less about action and more about resistance. Imagine if you were trying to push a shopping cart with the wheel brakes on, like the wheels were locked. Pushing harder would not be the great solution. The first step would be to take the brakes off, right? And that's often the first step that we need to take in this scenario. It's about understanding what's creating the resistance, what's putting the wheel brake on. And the same is true of our own lives. When we procrastinate or avoid doing the work or having the difficult conversations, or we keep abandoning our goals and our dreams, those behaviors are symptoms. They're rarely the actual problem. They're clues that point to something deeper. In many cases, the deeper issue is about protection. Our brains are remarkably good at keeping us safe, even when that safety comes at the expense of our growth. You think about the ego. The ego's job is to keep us safe, is to promote our survival, even when safe equals the same. So the ego's job is to keep us safe, which often equals same. We don't want to stay the same. We like to grow. We like to be moving forward. We despise the stagnation, as I was saying earlier. But our brains are so good at keeping us safe, it will prioritize that at the expense of our growth. So we might be protecting ourselves from failure, from rejection, from criticism, from disappointment, from uncertainty. Uncertainty is a scary one for us, or even just the increased expectations that come along with a lot of success. You'd be surprised at how many people fear what comes if they have a lot of success. The increased responsibility or visibility or pressure or financial responsibility. There's a lot of stuff that comes with newness, and our brains don't necessarily like that. We're wired for protection and survival. And every one of these behaviors makes sense once we understand what it's trying to protect us from, what the brain and the ego is trying to protect us from. This realization changes the questions that we need to ask. So instead of asking, how do I force myself to move forward? That doesn't work very well. We start asking this question, what am I protecting myself from? And that's a much more productive place to begin, because you can start to understand the fears or the limiting beliefs that are creating the resistance. Unfortunately, most people respond to feeling stuck by trying to solve the wrong problem. They consume more information. I'm very guilty of this. They are reading books, they're taking courses, they're watching seminars, they're listening to podcasts, and they're hoping that all of those things, or the next productivity system or morning routine, will finally unlock this mysterious answer that they've been looking for. And they wait for motivation. People often will wait for motivation to just magically appear before they take any action. They will then criticize themselves for lacking the discipline, and they'll convince themselves that everyone else has it, and people have it all figured out and they don't, and there's something inherently wrong with them. Or they focus exclusively on changing behaviors, the actions, without ever looking at the beliefs and the identity behind those behaviors. And we've talked about this before, the formula that thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions, lead to results. And oftentimes people only focus on actions and they don't go far enough back in the formula to create the change and the transformation that they want. Beliefs are so powerful. Mindset is incredibly powerful. And for example, if someone believes that they're the kind of person who always quits or never follows through or is permanently stuck, every setback that they experience becomes evidence that reinforces that story. Remember, the brain is a goal-achieving machine. The reticular activating system looks for evidence of your current beliefs. And so this is what's happening so often for people in their state of stuckness. One of the most powerful perspective shifts is realizing that movement creates clarity, not the other way around. You don't wait for the clarity to move, but you create movement first. We tend to believe that we'll act once we feel confident or motivated or certain. And in reality, confidence is so often the result of taking action. We discover the right path by walking it. I mean, you couldn't walk onto a mountain and figure out exactly what your hiking trail is if you don't start walking the trail. But so many people do this. They're asking for clarity without being willing to move. And we gain that clarity by experimenting, by learning, by adjusting along the way, by metaphorically walking down the wrong hiking path and having to turn around and get onto the right one. Action is not the reward for clarity. It's really the process that creates the clarity. Another important shift is recognizing that being stuck is not always the enemy. I understand it's super uncomfortable. I don't really enjoy it either. In fact, I used to loathe this feeling when I was younger, but it's not always this big problem that we make it out to be. Sometimes it's the signal that something needs attention. It may be telling us that we're exhausted and we need recovery instead of more effort. It may be revealing that we've outgrown an old identity. That's a really common one. Or an old definition of success or an old pattern or way of being. It may be exposing fears that we haven't acknowledged or expectations that we've been carrying around for years that just are inaccurate, not serving us. This feeling of stuckness could also be signaling that there's a big transition coming. In multiple times in my life, I can look back and see that the times when I felt stuck, those seasons, and there are about 3 really memorable seasons of time where I experienced this. After every one of those 3 times, I experienced a huge shift that altered my life in a very profound way for the better. I can think back to all 3 times and see, using my hindsight, which is 20/20 always, right? Seeing in hindsight how important that feeling of stuckness was to allow this transition to occur. But what happens so often is that we perceive this feeling of being stuck as a problem, as a lack of something. And because our brains are wired to look for evidence of our beliefs, because of the reticular activating system, like we were saying, it filters information based on our current beliefs and thoughts and feelings. Then our brain focuses on the lack and on the problem, which is the stuckness. We are hyper-focused on collecting evidence for that lack and that problem. And so that's all we see. And oftentimes it can be incredibly helpful to simply shift the perspective, shift the lens through which you are gathering information. Instead of asking, how do I get unstuck? A far more useful question could be, what is this feeling trying to teach me? Or what is the belief that I'm having and holding in my mind? Or what is this lack that I'm perceiving? What actually do I feel like I'm lacking? Oftentimes, when we can answer those questions honestly, it reveals something to us like, oh my God, these beliefs aren't even true. I've been freaking out over something that's really not even accurate. Or there isn't actually a lack of anything right now. I'm just a little uncomfortable in this space. Or I don't want to go back to the old version of me, so I might as well just sit where I am anyway. There are so many different revelations that people have when they really start digging into the resistance behind it and this belief about stuckness being a problem. I remember when I was a little kid, I used to think that people would have these lightning bolt moments in their life where everything changed. I think I got that idea from movies or stories or something like that. But ultimately, most people are not one decision away from changing their lives. It's very rare that we have that lightning bolt moment where everything shifts. But we do have lightning bolt mindset shifts or perspective shifts. This could be a new decision, a new belief that we install, a new perspective that we view our circumstances through. And so even though we might not be one decision away, we're often one realization away. Like we name the limiting belief, or the hidden fear or what we've been protecting ourselves from. And the moment that we correctly identify what's actually been keeping us stuck, not this just generic abstract feeling of stuckness, the next step often becomes surprisingly clear. And look, I'm the first person to say that this can be very difficult to see for yourself sometimes. Trust me, I've been there. That's why I have a coach. I've been in the fog many times myself. But that is the real value of coaching and mentorship and self-development is it's not about handing people answers, it's about helping them see the problem that they've actually been trying to solve and understanding, is this the real problem? Is there a bigger problem? Is there a better question to be asking? All of these different ways to get around the stuckness. And when people gain that kind of clarity, forward movement becomes much more natural. You stop trying to force yourself through resistance, through those locked wheels on the shopping cart, and you begin removing the things that have been holding you back all along. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to say about this topic, which is exactly why I'm holding a live workshop next Wednesday, August 26th, on this very subject. We are going to spend an hour and a half going deep on some of these ideas and answering all of your questions. And I would love to have you there. If you want to get on the list and be able to sign up for this workshop, how to find what's actually keeping you stuck, click the link in the show notes so that you can get the information you need to sign up before next Wednesday. Spots are going to be limited, so get involved as soon as you can. And I hope to see you there. In the meantime, if you found this episode helpful, share it with somebody you love. Send it out into the world so that other people can understand that their stuckness is not necessarily a problem and it's not a permanent identity, but it's something that you can shift even with just some simple perspective changes. I hope you're having a great week. Finish strong, team. I appreciate you giving your energy and listening to this podcast. And as always, my friend, thank you for being ready to impact.